I'm Sophia Chin, 32 years old, living in Portland, Oregon. By day, I'm the operations manager for a boutique marketing agency. By night, I'm Daniel's wife, the college sweetheart I once believed was my soulmate. We'd been together for 9 years, married for 4. There was a time I thought our bond was unbreakable. But sometimes the beginning of the end isn't a dramatic confrontation or some shocking revelation. It's just a notification on a phone screen that changes everything. That Tuesday morning, like countless others, I woke before Daniel. While making coffee in our kitchen, I noticed his phone buzzing on the granite counter. A message appeared from someone named Alex Rivera. Looking forward to Friday. The gallery opening, champagne, and that emerald dress we talked about. Can't stop thinking about you. I froze. Not because the message was explicit, but because it felt so intimate. I stood there, coffee mug halfway to my lips, bare feet cold against the hardwood floor. From upstairs, I could hear the shower running as Daniel prepared for another day at his architectural firm. And me? I couldn't look away from that screen as it faded to black, requiring a passcode I didn't know. I didn't need to unlock it. In that moment, what I felt wasn't surprise. It was recognition. I'd been sensing something for months. Daniel had been working late more frequently, claiming deadline pressures and client meetings. He'd started keeping his phone face down during dinners, something he'd never done before. His laptop now had a lock screen. And those eyes that once found me across crowded rooms now seemed to look everywhere but at me. I used to tell myself, don't be paranoid, Sophia. Everyone gets distant sometimes. Don't create problems where none exist. But now, I wanted to go back and shake that naive woman. Stop making excuses. I finished making coffee, got dressed for work, and applied my makeup with steady hands. Inside, I felt strangely detached, as if I was watching my life from somewhere outside my body. When I came downstairs, Daniel was adjusting his tie in the hallway mirror. He smiled at me just like every other morning, unaware that everything had shifted the moment I read that message. I have that client presentation in Eugene on Friday, he said, straightening his collar. Might need to stay overnight to finalize the designs. I nodded. Don't forget your good suit. First impressions matter. My voice sounded normal, emotionless. I didn't ask about the message. I didn't ask who Alex Rivera was. I didn't want to disrupt the performance he was putting on, because in my mind, something else was already taking shape, and I wouldn't say a word until I was ready. Daniel always slept deeply after his Wednesday squash games and his ritual glass of scotch. I knew this as well as I knew his phone's fingerprint was his left thumb. That night, once Daniel had fallen into his alcohol-induced sleep, the scent of his cologne and whiskey still lingering in the air, I carefully took his phone and gently pressed his thumb to the sensor. Click! The screen illuminated. A chill ran down my spine like the winter rain that used to fall on the cabin where he once promised we'd grow old together. The message about the emerald dress was just the beginning. What I discovered was an entire secret world he'd been building, one I had no place in. Alex Rivera wasn't some young infatuation. Alex was a curator at the Contemporary Art Museum, 35 years old, living in downtown Portland. Sophisticated, cultured, and most importantly, she was married. Her husband's name appeared in older messages. Marcus is at the conference in Chicago all week. My apartment is free. Marcus Rivera, her husband. I quietly searched for him online, typing his name into the search bar. There it was, his LinkedIn profile. Marcus Rivera, 38 years old, environmental lawyer specializing in renewable energy cases with a practice in Beaverton. His profile photo showed a lean man with kind eyes and a gentle smile. I didn't sleep that night. Each message felt like a scalpel cutting through treasured memories. Every time, Daniel had claimed late meetings. Every evening I'd spent alone, reviewing client proposals with only the dishwasher's hum for company. The next morning, I sat at my computer, drafting and redrafting a message at least 20 times before finally sending it. Hi Marcus, this is Sophia Chin. I believe my husband, Daniel Chin, and your wife, Alex Rivera, are involved in an affair. If you'd like to discuss this, I have evidence. My number is 503-555-0847. My hands were trembling as I hit send. 2 hours later, my phone rang. His voice was warm but strained, with an underlying tremor. Is this some kind of prank? I wish it were, I replied, my mouth dry. I have texts, photos, and their plans for Friday night at the Meridian Gallery. A long pause. What do you want to do about this? He asked after the silence stretched too long. I gripped the phone tightly, then spoke carefully. Would you be interested in meeting them there before they toast with champagne or disappear into their private world? Marcus didn't respond immediately, then finally exhaled deeply. Yes, but I want to meet with you first. I need to see what you found. We agreed to meet Thursday evening at a quiet cafe in Lake Oswego, halfway between our respective neighborhoods. I arrived early, choosing a table near the window facing the parking lot. When Marcus walked in, I recognized him instantly. Tall, wearing a charcoal sweater, moving with the careful precision of someone carrying invisible weight. He sat down without pleasantries. I placed my phone on the weathered wooden table, opened the message thread between Daniel and Alex, and handed it to him. With each swipe, I watched his jaw tighten. When he reached the photo Alex had sent, her reflection in the bathroom mirror of what was clearly their shared apartment, he closed his eyes and leaned back. I thought it was just work stress, just the demands of her job, he murmured. She kept saying she needed space to focus on her career. Now I understand what she was really focusing on. After nearly 2 hours of comparing evidence and sharing our parallel experiences of being deceived, Marcus said quietly, I still have access to Alex's calendar. She doesn't know I can see her museum events. I nodded. Daniel thinks I'm visiting my sister in Seattle this weekend. He has no idea I'll be anywhere near Portland. Then we'll be there first, he said, meeting my eyes directly. But no confrontation, no scene. Just the truth. Let them see themselves clearly for once. I tightened my grip on my coffee cup and agreed. The plan emerged from our shared pain, not revenge, but revelation. A mirror held up to the lies they'd constructed so carefully. We arranged to meet Friday evening at the Meridian Gallery. They were scheduled to arrive at 7. By 6:30, I was standing in the contemporary art section of the gallery, surrounded by abstract paintings that seemed to reflect the chaos I felt inside. The space was elegant, white walls, polished concrete floors, and dramatic lighting that made everything appear significant. Marcus was already there, standing before a massive canvas of fractured mirrors, each piece reflecting a different angle of distorted reality. When I approached, he nodded, a simple acknowledgement between two people bound by betrayal. Did you sleep last night? He asked, his voice low. Maybe an hour. You? Not really. But lawyers are used to sleepless nights before big cases. We stood quietly for several minutes, not uncomfortable, just two people preparing for the truth. Then I spoke. The last time I was at a gallery opening was 2 years ago. Daniel and I came here after one of his work trips. I remember thinking we looked like the perfect couple in the reflection of one of these pieces. Marcus glanced at me, his expression softening. Alex and I used to come to these events together. But lately, she's been attending alone, saying I wouldn't appreciate the artistic vision. We didn't cry. There was only the soft murmur of other gallery visitors and the subtle hum of air conditioning. Do you think we're crossing a line? I asked, though I already knew my answer. No, Marcus said firmly. If this were about punishment, maybe. But this is about making them face reality, something they've been avoiding for months. I nodded, feeling like we were about to conduct an intervention rather than a confrontation. We positioned ourselves strategically near the gallery's main entrance, partially hidden behind a sculptural installation. From there, we could see everyone who entered while remaining unnoticed ourselves. How do you think they'll react? I asked as we settled into our vantage point. Marcus shook his head slowly. Alex will try to explain it away. Daniel. I'm not sure. But I guarantee neither of them is prepared for the fact that we both know everything. As we waited, we talked more about ourselves, not just as the betrayed spouses, but as individuals who had been stripped of illusions. I told Marcus about the family dinners Daniel had skipped, claiming work emergencies, about the credit card charges from restaurants I'd never been to, and how I'd convinced myself he was just networking. Marcus shared how Alex had started keeping separate social media accounts, claiming her professional image required privacy, and how she'd begun receiving mysterious flower deliveries at work. I knew something was wrong, he said. But I chose to trust her word over my instincts. Outside, the Portland evening grew darker. The gallery's glass windows now reflected the interior lights more than the street beyond. 7:15 p.m. Daniel's black sedan pulled up to the valet stand. Alex stepped out first, stunning in an emerald silk dress that caught the light like liquid jewelry. Daniel followed, wearing his best suit, carrying a small gift bag. They moved together with the easy intimacy of established lovers, laughing at some private joke as they approached the entrance. The gallery doors opened. Alex entered first, her smile bright and confident. Daniel was close behind, his hand briefly touching the small of her back, a gesture so familiar it made my chest tighten. They walked directly toward the main exhibition space, clearly knowing exactly where they were going. Marcus and I exchanged a look. Without words, we began following them through the crowd of wine-sipping art enthusiasts. We found them in the sculpture garden, standing before a piece called Intersections, twisted metal forms that seemed to dance around each other in an eternal embrace. Alex was leaning into Daniel, pointing out details in the artwork, while he whispered something that made her laugh. They looked happy. Genuinely, radiantly happy in a way that cut deeper than anger. That's when Marcus stepped forward, moving with the quiet confidence of someone who'd made a final decision. "It's a beautiful piece, isn't it?" he said, his voice carrying just enough to reach them. Alex turned first, her face cycling through confusion, recognition, and then something close to panic. Daniel's expression followed the same progression, landing on a kind of frozen shock. "Marcus," Alex breathed, her hand instinctively moving away from Daniel's arm. "And Daniel," I said, stepping out from behind a nearby column. "Fancy meeting you here." Daniel's gift bag slipped from his fingers, hitting the polished floor with a dull thud. Inside, I glimpsed a small velvet box. The four of us stood there in a tableau that felt surreal, like we were part of the art installation ourselves. "This isn't what it looks like," Alex began, but her voice lacked conviction. Marcus tilted his head slightly. "What does it look like, exactly?" "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my wife is on a date with another woman's husband." Daniel found his voice first. "Sophia, I can explain." "Can you?" I interrupted gently. "Can you explain the months of lies? The fake business trips? The secret messages about emerald dresses and champagne?" Alex's composure cracked. "How did you know?" Marcus finished. "The same way married people usually find out. We paid attention to the details you thought we'd ignore." The gallery's ambient sounds, conversations, footsteps, the clinking of wine glasses, seemed to fade around us. Other visitors moved past our small drama, oblivious to the life-changing moment unfolding among the art. "We need to talk," Daniel said, his professional demeanor trying to reassert itself. "Yes," I agreed. "We do. But not here." Marcus looked at Alex, then at Daniel and me. "There's a private room upstairs. For VIP previews. It should be empty now." Alex nodded reluctantly, and we made our way through the gallery like a strange procession, two couples whose lives had just collided in the most public of spaces. The VIP room was intimate and stark, with a few pieces of rotating artwork and a small conference table. The lighting was softer here, more forgiving, but it couldn't soften what was about to happen. We sat across from each other, Marcus and I on one side, Daniel and Alex on the other. The symmetry felt intentional, like a negotiation. How long? Marcus asked directly. Alex looked at Daniel, then back at her husband. For months. I felt something twist in my chest. For months of lies. It wasn't supposed to happen, Daniel said, his voice quiet. We met at the sustainability conference. We just connected. Connected, I repeated. Is that what we're calling it now? Alex leaned forward, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Sophia, I never meant to hurt you. But what Daniel and I have, it's real. It's not just some affair. I studied her face, seeing something I hadn't expected. Genuine emotion. Not guilt or shame, but something closer to desperation. Real, I said slowly. Like what Marcus and I thought we had was real. That's when Marcus surprised everyone, including me. Instead of anger or accusations, he laughed, a short, bitter sound. You know what's funny? He said, looking directly at Alex. I've been having an affair too. The room went completely silent. Alex stared at him, her mouth slightly open. What? With my paralegal, Jennifer. For about 6 months now. Marcus's voice was steady, matter of fact. I was going to tell you after your next business trip. I turned to stare at Marcus, feeling like the ground was shifting beneath me. Daniel leaned back in his chair. You're lying. Am I? Marcus pulled out his phone, scrolled to a message thread, and placed it on the table. Should I read some of these out loud? Alex was shaking her head slowly. This is insane. Is it? Marcus looked around the table. For people, all lying to each other, all pretending to be victims of circumstances beyond our control. I found my voice. You knew about Daniel and Alex? I suspected, Marcus admitted. Just like you suspected. Just like Alex probably suspected about Jennifer and me. Just like Daniel probably suspected. Something was off with all of us. Daniel was staring at the table. I thought maybe you were having problems, but I didn't know. We're all having problems, I said quietly. The question is what we do about it now. Alex was crying now, but not the devastated tears I'd expected. Something closer to relief. I feel like I can finally breathe, she said. I've been drowning in guilt for months, and now we're all just here, being honest for the first time in forever. I looked around the table at these 3 people who had been central to my life, and I realized something profound. We weren't enemies. We were 4 people who had gotten lost somewhere along the way and had been too afraid to admit it. So what now? Daniel asked. Now we tell the truth, I said. All of it. To ourselves and to each other. What followed was unlike anything I could have imagined. Instead of accusations and blame, we began talking, really talking, about what had led us to this moment. Alex spoke about feeling invisible in her marriage, how Marcus's work consumed him, and left little room for her dreams. Marcus admitted he'd been hiding behind his career to avoid confronting problems at home. Daniel confessed that our relationship had felt stagnant for years, but he'd been too comfortable to address it. And I acknowledged that I'd been so focused on maintaining the appearance of happiness that I'd stopped actually pursuing it. We all chose the easy way out, Marcus said. Instead of having difficult conversations, we found escape routes. But what are we escaping to? I asked. More lies? More secret relationships? More pretending? Alex wiped her eyes with a tissue from her purse. I don't want to keep lying. To anyone. Neither do I, Daniel said. But I also don't know how to fix this. Maybe we don't fix it, I said slowly. Maybe we start over. All of us. Separately. The idea hung in the air like a challenge. Marcus nodded first. Clean slate. Honest endings instead of dishonest continuations. What about us? Alex asked, looking at Daniel. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. What about us? We found each other while we were both lying to other people. How do we build something real on that foundation? It was a fair question. One that seemed to deflate some of Alex's hope. We figure it out honestly, she said finally. Or we don't figure it out at all. I stood up, feeling suddenly clear about what I needed to do. I want a divorce, Daniel. Not because I hate you, but because we've both outgrown what we had. and we both deserve the chance to find something better. Daniel nodded. I want that too. Marcus looked at Alex. I want the same thing. A clean break. No more pretending we can go back to how things were. Alex took a shaky breath. Okay, but I want us all to promise something. She looked around the table. I want us to promise that when we walk out of here, we're done with lies. Whatever relationships we pursue, whatever life changes we make, we do them honestly. It felt like a vow, stranger and more meaningful than the wedding vows I'd made years earlier. We all agreed. 6 months later, I was standing on the deck of my new apartment in the Pearl District, holding a cup of tea and watching the Willamette River flow beneath the city bridges. The divorce had been finalized quickly, no contest, no drama, just two people acknowledging that they'd grown in different directions. I'd quit my job at the marketing agency and started freelance consulting, working with small businesses that aligned with my values. The pay was less predictable, but the work felt meaningful in a way my old job never had. Daniel had moved to San Francisco, taking a position with a sustainable architecture firm. We'd spoken once since the divorce was final, a brief, friendly conversation about forwarding some mail. There was no animosity, just the gentle sadness of a chapter that had ended. Marcus and I had stayed in touch, not romantically, but as friends who'd walked through fire together. He'd ended things with Jennifer and was taking time to figure out what he actually wanted from life rather than what he thought he should want. Alex had taken a curator position at a gallery in Seattle. She and Daniel had tried dating for a few weeks after our conversation, but realized that their attraction had been based more on escape than genuine compatibility. On this particular evening, as I watched the sunset paint the river gold, I got a text from Marcus. Saw a piece today that reminded me of that night at the gallery. Titled New Beginnings. Thought you'd appreciate the irony. I smiled and texted back, not ironic. Perfect. What we discovered that night wasn't that we were all terrible people, but that we were all human. Flawed, frightened, and desperate for connection, even when we went about it in destructive ways. The difference was that we'd chosen to face our flaws rather than hide from them. I'd learned that the end of something isn't always a tragedy. Sometimes it's a gift, the chance to stop living someone else's version of your life and start creating your own. My story isn't about betrayal and revenge. It's about 4 people who found the courage to stop lying to themselves and each other, and in doing so, found a path to something better. As I finished my tea and prepared to go inside, I reflected on that moment in the gallery when everything changed. We'd gone there expecting to expose lies, but we'd ended up exposing the truth instead. And sometimes, that's exactly what you need to set yourself free.